All right, ladies, gentlemen, gamers, and fellow questioners, welcome back. Welcome back to another commentary where I do these videos because I want content on my channel and I'm too lazy slash not good enough to do anything else. Regardless, today is going to be a little bit of a difficult one. Today we are tackling a question that is a little tough because it's so open-ended, but it's a question that I've been thinking about a lot recently, at least by the time of recording this, by the time it actually goes on YouTube, or if it does at all, who knows when that'll be. However, this is a question that has been plaguing me a lot for a variety of reasons, of which I won't go into too much. However, the overarching question is, why do we do things? I question a lot of reality recently, mostly because I believe we are in the dark dimension. And because we are in the dark dimension, things don't make sense, because that is the only explanation I can really make up of why things are the way they are, because this can't be reality. The things that are happening and how bad they are, they can't be reality. That can go into another question of how much do we blame society versus how much do we blame people for the position they are in, but we're not going to go through that now. The overarching question is, why do we do things? So there's a lot of different avenues we can approach this question, right? And it probably will and can get messy. So what do I mean by this? You know, at the end of the day, I'm asking a very big question that I think almost no one has a hard, definite answer to. Obviously, there's no hard, definite answers to any of what I'm about to say. This is all subjective. But that's the whole point. You know, people have kind of come to their own answers, but there's no universal, general answer. So that might be an answer in and of itself. People might say there's a general answer, people might say there's a universal answer. I think there's no way to prove this. This is purely opinionated. So, the main question is, why do we do things as humans, right? I think we do things as humans because, we're here, might as well. Mostly. Then we get into specifics of, again, nothing has to be done. The only main thing that has to be done in your life is you have to live until you die. If you are born, if you come into existence, and this can get into a whole other topic of, when do you come in existence? When are you considered a person, at least in the uterus? But it goes into the question of, if you are alive, whenever that may be, whenever you are considered your own being, your own autonomous being, well, maybe not autonomous, but your own being, you have to live until you die. That's the only thing you have to do. You don't have to do anything else. Everything else is a choice, right? Living, continuing to live, ending your life, anything else is a choice. You have to live until you die. So, at that point, like I said before, there's nothing you have to do. So why do we do things? Well, a lot of it has to do with something similar to a video I made before where it's our natural instinct. Instinctively, it's been ingrained in us naturally to do certain things. It's been ingrained in us, if you're a fellow believer of Freud, to fuck, to eat, to seek pleasure, right? Avoid pain. Generally, that's why we do a lot of things. But we've learned throughout the years that certain things gives us more pleasure and less pain than others. Now, this varies from person to person, but I'm talking more generally, right? We're still not to the main topic of why I'm making this video. The main topic is we're going to focus this why down to a certain thing, which I believe there's a reason why. It's a little dark and morbid, but hey, the dark dimension has shaped me that way, so what can we do? But regardless, why do we do things? Well, because some things give more pleasure than others. At the root of the cause is always pleasure, I believe. It's pleasure, or at least some weird, sick idea of pleasure, and we'll get into that. However, the idea of pleasure can come from procreating, leaving a lasting impression. A lot of the times it's adopting society's ideas, whether those ideas are concrete or not, whether those are actually ideas that are just towards humans or things we've made ourselves believe because everyone else does them. That can again be a whole other conversation. Like I said, this is going to get a little messy, if it isn't already. So, why do we do things in general? It's to live, it's to procreate, it's to get a feeling of pleasure. And different things give us that, like I've said. So, the place I want to kind of focus on is, why do we have friends and relationships, right? Now, everything can be traced back in my eyes to pleasure. So at that point, have I answered the question? Why do we do things? It's obviously for pleasure. Yes and no. It gets a little bit more complicated, and we're going to kind of go through it, right? So, in terms of friendship and stuff, obviously, this is a question that hits close to home to me because I always question everything in my life at this point. But it's the question of why do people have friends, right? At the base level, I think a lot of people don't even think of it. If people, well, humans are social creatures in general, right? So it fulfills a social need, it gives us pleasure to have friends, right? But what is a friend? So this kind of switches from a question of why to what is. What is a friend and why do we have friends? It's obviously for pleasure, but for what kind of pleasure? The pleasure of doing things with someone else? We do things with other people all the time. We go to work with people, we take the subway with people who aren't very nice and who are sometimes homeless and ask me for money every morning. Sometimes we do a lot of things with people. Essentially, a lot of the time, unless you're doing things by yourself, which is realistically in this day and age very rare, you're always doing something with someone else. But we wouldn't consider them friends now, would we? So why is this? We don't consider them friends because we don't know them. We're not technically doing it together because we want to. Most of the time it's because we have to. So what is a friend? A friend is someone who you know on a more intimate level than just stranger. You can know someone and go to someone or go with someone to the same stop every day like I usually do on my subway ride. I would not consider these people friends. I don't know them. So a friend is someone you do know on a more deeper level. But at that point, that's just not it. That's not all there is to a friend. What is there after? I know a lot of the people at my work. I don't consider them friends, I consider them acquaintances. So at that point, is a friend a two-way street? I can consider people friends that they won't consider me friends. So it's not fully a two-way street, it's like a street and a half, right? It can definitely be connected, where both people can think of each other as friends, but again, this goes into subjectivism where maybe the two people have a different idea of a friend. One person has a very deep idea of a friend where, oh, they're more like a brother to some other people, and the other person has the more normal idea of a friend of, well, we do stuff together. It all depends, right? But getting closer to what friend means, it's someone you know who you decide to do stuff with out of your way, right? It's not just you do it because you meet up or things come together. I would say you actively do things together that you want to do that you didn't have to do. I would say that's a friend. Friends is someone you enjoy, right? So then it becomes the question of why do we have friends? We have friends again for pleasure. However, that boils friendship down to a sort of business like transaction, which is what I do with a lot of things, unfortunately, but this is the way I think of it. We have friends because we want something from people. We want to get pleasure. Granted, the way we could get pleasure from friends is in different ways. We can be friends with benefits, although many people are not like that. And then some people wouldn't even consider that friendship, although you are going out of your way to do something with someone. But friendship is weird. Most people don't have a time limit on it. I think there kind of is. Friendship can change over the years. You can be friends with someone for a long time, and then all of a sudden they're a different person. Or at the very least, you realize they're a different person. And then you're like, wait a minute, I'm not this person's friend anymore. Because people do change over time. People change over time. Now, whether this is because, at least from what I heard, if the science is still correct, every 7 years we recycle all of our cells. All of our cells are different from how we were 7 years ago. And that brings in the great, what is it called? I don't want to call it a puzzle. It's this great question posed by some ancient Greek dude, where it's like, oh, if you rebuild a ship with entirely different pieces, is it the same ship? If we are cycled out, every cell in our body is renewed, and no cells will be the same from previously 7 years ago, again, if the science checks out, are we the same person? Now, I'm not looking at it from that point. I'm not looking at it from the physical point. I'm looking at it from the mental point, because over time people change mentally, right? So at that point, friendship, in my eyes, sort of gets renewed in a way. You continue to be friends with people. You continue to decide to be friends with them, to do things with them that you hopefully still enjoy. Sometimes friendship isn't really a choice. It's more of forced because, like I said before, we're social creatures. We sort of need interaction. So I would say some people are friends with others because they literally have no one else. And it's a sad thing, but again, dark dimension. But ignoring all of the dark dimension ideas, we'll go to what I think is just base dimension for everyone. We have friends because we get something out of it. We get pleasure out of it. Now, this might seem not true, or some people might have an issue with this. I don't get pleasure from my friend. We're just friends because we're friends. Well, then I would argue you get pleasure from the idea of being friends. Just being friends and being social gives you pleasure. Or they're like, no, I actively don't do things. I don't do things that I want to do for my friends because I'm their friend. Hopefully, they'll do it to me. At that point, it brings up the question is there altruism in friendship? Is there unequivocal care? Or basically, this could go with relationships too, because relationships are maybe in a way a more advanced version of friendship where does love exist, what is love, but again we'll stick to just friends here. We won't get into the messy things of relationships too. So is there altruism in friendship? I would say no. Ironically enough, I would say no, because even if you do something you don't like for the sake of a friend, you're doing it for one of two reasons. And people, in my eyes, this is sort of a self-fulfilling fantasy at this point where this idea, because of the way I'm going to describe it, can never be wrong, because we'll go into it once I say it. But the idea is here that one, you're doing something you don't like for a friend because you hope they'll do it one day back to you, right? So it's reciprocal altruism. Or number two, because you hope they enjoy it, which I would then argue you're getting enjoyment from what they enjoy. Now, you're not getting as much enjoyment as if you would be doing something that you want to do with them. However, you're getting some enjoyment from it, unless you're forced, because again, I've said this before, unless you're forced, this all goes out the window. Um, if you're not forced, then you are getting some sort of pleasure that even if there's varying levels, even if it's not a lot, it's above a certain threshold where you're willing to do it. What's the reason you help your friends? You want them to be okay. You want them to be good. At least this is what I think for normal people. I'll help my friend in life because I want him to be good in life. Why? Because that gives me pleasure. It gives me peace of mind. It makes me feel good, right? At the end of the day, I feel like people are just friends with each other because they know the other person, at least, is okay with them. They mesh to a certain extent. Either their circumstances are like that where they have to link up. Well, don't have to, but they happen to link up. They happen to be in the same area or doing the same thing. So they say, why not? I like you enough. You like me enough. We give each other enough pleasure to where we don't mind doing stuff out of our way for each other or with each other. And then the friendship goes from there. Now, the way I describe it sounds a little robotic, a little business oriented, but I think everything at the end of the day sort of is, whether we really realize it or not. I think the why of why we do a lot of things is ultimately rooted in the cause of pleasure. So, like I said, we had the answer from the beginning, we just narrowed it down. See, it's weird though, then, because when you look at it like this, number one, it's unnerving, I feel, to a lot of people, or at least that's what a lot of people have told me. And number two, anything I say is very biased and subjective, so it might not even be true. But I ask this because I think, how and why do we make friends? Obviously, I want more friends. I want to fulfill my own need of pleasure because I want to be more social. Also, having friends leads to other things that people may or may not think of, which is, it leads to future safety. It could also lead to danger because let's just say you become friends with a guy who's unstable or a guy who you eventually piss off and they eventually kill you for some reason. Or, you could be friends with a lot of different people that might not be good to be friends with, but in the moment you won't know that. So ultimately, having friends is not too ultimately good. However, I would say overall it's good. So, again, I ask this because I'm sort of wondering as I get older, this is where it kind of hits close to home here. As I get older, obviously I have my own friends. This is correct. But I want more friends. I want to know more people. Do I want to know too many people? No, but I want to know more people because I think it's always good to know more than a couple. I would say I have a couple of actual friends because to me, being a friend is not just knowing who someone is. It's like I said, excuse me, it's going out of your way to do things with them. So, a lot of people I think are friends that aren't really friends, they're acquaintances. A friend to me carries a certain weight. It carries a certain weight of they go past an acquaintance, they go past, there's someone you will actually not necessarily care for, but someone you will be more invested in than just an everyday person or someone you casually interact with. It goes past that. It also depends on comfortability and everything. But yeah, generally I ask as I get older, you know, if I feel lonely, why is that? Is it because I don't have enough friends? This is gonna go into too many different avenues. So we'll keep it condensed to, why do we have friends? It's because usually we're doing the same things. We like the other person, how they are, either physically, which is very vain, or personality wise, which is better. I would say you can judge someone based on how they act, which is, at the end of the day, I think part in their control, partly not, because like I said before, we all have nature versus nurture percentages. Some people are naturally how they are with very little influence from their outside environment. Other people are very influenced by their outside environment. But regardless, it's partly in your control more than your looks. Because when people alter their looks, a lot of other people get unnerved by it because they see it as unnatural. Most of the time, people think, or for a long time, people couldn't really change their physical looks, at least in a way to make it better. I mean, you could bash your own face in with a rock and it'll be mashed up, and that is changing your look, but that's not for the better. But I'm being too literal here. Anyway, so again, like I said, I question why people are friends because I often think maybe I want more friends because I don't really know why I'm doing what I'm doing anymore and why my friends are my friends most of the time. So I questioned recently, why are people friends? It all goes into pleasure. And it all goes into people using other people, which isn't bad. I don't want to say it's bad because everyone does it. And this isn't a case where because everyone does it, it's a bad thing. I think it's not inherently bad that people use other people. I would say sometimes it's even disrespectful if you expect someone else to not provide a use. Or I said that kind of wrong. I think it's somewhat disrespectful where a person will interact with another person and not give anything, in a way. Like, you're not just friends for the fuck of it. You're friends because you're getting something out of it. This is going all over the place. I'm starting to get sidetracked and not understand my own thoughts. But anyway, this was just a random thought I had of why we're friends. I think ultimately it does, like I said, go down to the feeling of you're getting something out of it. You're getting pleasure, whether you know it or not. This question was posed in my philosophy class in college of, if all we do something is for that, like, little glow, that little good feeling of, we liked what we did, whether it's morally seen as good or bad, because that's subjective. When we do something, we get that nice little feeling. So technically, everything we do is for a nice feeling, again, unless we're forced. So they posed this question of Mother Teresa. What if Mother Teresa is doing things because she's getting a good feeling from helping people, and if she didn't get that good feeling, she wouldn't do it? At that point, it gets into the question of do people do things based on feeling or principle? There definitely are some people who do things that don't make them feel good because of principle. But again, it all circles back to, they're not doing it because they like it, but they're doing it because they're upholding a principle, which at the end of the day probably gives them a good feeling of upholding that principle. So yeah, before this goes too crazy, I'll just sort of end it here. Friendship is weird. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking a lot about things. It somewhat doesn't make sense. If anyone has gone this far and, has any idea of what friendship is or what they think it's like, please tell me in the comments below because I'm still trying to think about it. It still kind of is making sense to me, but if it makes sense to me this way, then it goes into subjectivism of, then why would anyone be my friend? But that's getting into other stuff. And obviously, as people might be able to tell, I'm kind of all over the place right now. But anyway, yeah, if you have any idea of what friendship is or how it is or why it is, please tell me in the comments below. If you want me to talk critically about anything else, or at least think about something and ramble on about it in a random video I use to provide my channel with content and to take up my own time because I don't know what else to do or don't want to do anything else, please also write in the comments below. I stream every day at Twitch TV/Tecnics channel, or at least I try to. So if you want to hang out there, chillax, and watch me do nonsense, you can go do that too. Anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed.